Hello and welcome viewers. You're watching this special presentation of Sansad TV with your host Kriti Mishra. A 1974 batch Indian Foreign Service officer, he has served as the permanent representative of India to the UN. A member of parliament in the Rajya Sabha, he has been at the forefront of handling the oil import issues pertaining to India since the war broke out between Russia and Ukraine. With India's energy demand and particularly oil and gas demand rising, the oil and gas sector remains in focus. And he has been reappointed as the Union Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas in the third term under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Joining us in the studio in Parliament of India, Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister, Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri. So welcome to Sansad TV and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Let's begin this conversation on a very lighter note. You've been a career diplomat, helped the Ministries of Civil Aviation, Housing and Urban Affairs. You were also a part of Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Take us through your journey so far.
You want to know my journey, my personal journey since I got started, or my journey in the Modi government?
Sir, since you started?
Since I started, well, I'm 72 years old. I was educated in different parts of the world. I did 5 years of university education in Delhi. I spent a year on the teaching faculty of one of Delhi University's premier colleges. I took the IAS exam in 1973. I joined the Foreign Service in 1974. I served for 39 years, nearly 13 years as an ambassador. I had the privilege of serving in Japan, Sri Lanka, Brazil, London, Geneva on 3 occasions, and then in New York. The 39 years I spent in the Foreign Service was a unique experience. And after that, I've been a minister in the Modi government for 7 years. So all in all, if you say that, if you count the stint I had in the private sector for a few months before I joined on a teaching job in Delhi University, the career goes over 50 years. The last 7 years in particular have been very eventful because I had the privilege of being part of the Honorable Prime Minister's team. He has sought and largely achieved a transformational change in India. We've gone from being the 10th largest economy to the 5th largest, and the game plan he has of India becoming the 3rd largest economy during the 3rd term, which has just commenced. There are basic changes taking place. As you mentioned, Madam, I had the privilege of being Housing Minister, Urban Affairs Minister for 7 years. I spent 2 years each in Civil Aviation and Commerce and Industry, and I have now been Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister for 3 years. Many basic changes have taken place, but I think the fundamental challenge in the energy sector of ensuring that there is no doubt about availability, affordability and sustainability, that's been the guiding mantra. Our energy consumption is shooting up.
Yeah.
When I joined, it was 5 million barrels of crude oil a day. Today it's 5.33 million barrels of crude oil a day. I'm sure it's going to go up. Whenever any country's energy consumption goes up, it is a sure indicator that the economy is doing well. In fact, the converse, if energy consumption stagnates or declines, then it could be a reasonably good pointer that the economy is faltering or slowing down.
Well, absolutely, sir. But talking about prices particularly, the prices in India have fallen when there's this global turmoil. How have we managed to insulate ourselves? In fact, there was reduction also in the excise duty by the centre.
This has been one of the more difficult journeys that the Prime Minister has navigated, and he has done so successfully. One is that under his guidance, we diversified the sources of supply from 27 to 39. Number two, when global turbulence took place, as you mentioned, the Russia-Ukraine war, our imports of crude oil from Russia at that point of time merely constituted 0.2% of our overall crude oil procurement. Today they are in excess of 40%. Ours is a very basic approach. We float tenders for importation of particular brands of crude for supply at the point of importation. And we will buy from wherever we can get the cheapest. So we are always on the lookout for more competitive, more economical pricing. When turbulence takes place in an area and you can't navigate, obviously longer routes are taken, freight rates go up, insurance rates go up. But by and large, all that being given, I think the Prime Minister's decision on 2 occasions to reduce the central excise duty, first in November 2021 and secondly in May 2022, and then the BJP ruled states reducing VAT, that enabled us to bring prices down. India is one of perhaps the only country in the world where over a reference 2-3 year period prices have actually come down. We have resisted the temptation of utilizing this opportunity to hike prices as some of the other non-BJP states have done. BJP states have shown maturity. Of course, the cuts that they have introduced on their VAT regimes have varied, but by and large, BJP ruled states have petrol and diesel 10 rupees or 8 rupees cheaper than non-BJP routes, on an average. There are certain other very important decisions. The decisions in relation to sustainability, green energy. We have the biofuel blending is at approximately 15% now. It was 1.4% in 2014. We are determined to take it to 20%. We are diversifying the sources of the feed. Green energy also in the form of green hydrogen. Some very important steps are being taken. But I think the most compelling imperative for us just now is to enhance domestic exploration and production. So I've been taking a series of meetings to make sure that there is reinforced prioritization to enhance our E&P. The gestation is always long, but I think we are getting there.
Do you have a specific roadmap for it, sir? Because exploration, as you said, the gestation period is very long.
Well, the normal temptation, if global prices are not particularly high, the normal temptation is, why do you want to incur heavy capital expenditure and on drilling, on offshore exploration?
Yes.
And that was also partly hampered by our regime, which was not entirely inviting. So the Prime Minister took 2 decisions. Out of our 3.5 million square kilometers of the sedimentary basin, 1 million square kilometers was no-go area that has been opened up to investment, including by foreigners. And all the data has been made available on the global data repository at the University of Houston. And I think other steps that we are taking, I think we've got renewed interest from the global major oil companies, and our own companies are also getting off. And I think you will see in the coming 6 months, the institutional reforms we have taken, we will implement that to get more and more gas production and oil production. Gas production, by the way, is doing reasonably well. We have been increasing it by 18% or so. I'm talking about natural gas.
Yes. Yeah. Well, absolutely, sir. Since this is a candid conversation, I'd like to know, sir, as you navigated this geopolitical labyrinth, which was the most difficult point?
Well, this is a question I'm often asked, which was your favorite posting, which is the most difficult? Every challenge is sui generis. It's one of a kind. You can't use your experience of negotiating, let's say, in Latin America with what you had to do with Russia.
That's right.
Or what you had to do with the United States. I mean, if you have a government, as we do, entirely committed to the consumer in terms of making sure there is no diversion, that there is no even an apprehension of not having enough available or affordable, then you will buy from wherever. And I think what has stood us in good stead is that the political system, particularly the Prime Minister, has been absolutely clear. We haven't got into controversy. Yeah. Some people said buy from here, from there. We said we are committed to our consumer, and the Prime Minister has a moral duty to the Indian consumer. So I think we have not been complicated. I think negotiating with, and I spent 39 years in the Foreign Service.
That's right.
So I can't say this is easier, more difficult. It doesn't work like that. Every situation has to be dealt with, and with the confidence that we have of a strong government, a clear, objective and visionary Prime Minister, it becomes easier.
Well pointed, well taken, sir. But we are not soothsayers here. But you do have exposure to geopolitics, to oil diplomacy. As a consumer, I'm compelled to ask, where are the prices heading?
I wish I could answer that question to my own satisfaction. I can tell you that insofar as gas is concerned, natural gas is concerned, I see the global supply situation, our own this thing. I think you are heading in the next 2 years into a relative comfort area in gas supplies, both on price and availability, and that one impacts the other. Insofar as crude oil is concerned, I would say that there are a few factors which I take as the more important. I think I had a conversation with my counterpart in one of the more important producing countries. Some of the production cuts that they had envisaged earlier, they are wanting to phase those out and begin production again. If the producers produce even the committed quantities, then I think prices will remain in the current range of 80, 85, 88, etc. They could even go down, because what is happening is newer suppliers coming on board. Some of the very large economy, one very large economy, I think, which had a appetite for energy which was insatiable, I think they are now more or less satiated. They have a lot of imports taking place. If you look at refining capacity in the world, so I'm not unduly concerned, and I continue to remain cautiously optimistic that the global turbulence centers, I may use that word, not a very appropriate, where there is more likelihood of tension breaking, that better sense will prevail. You have elections coming up in a very important country, the United States, in November. European countries, UK had an election yesterday, France is going for an election. And in this political change that is taking place, I hope good sense prevails, and the energy markets, which are largely, I'm not saying entirely, but to a large extent impacted by political factors, that they will remain calm.
Well, cautiously optimistic, that will be the big takeaway from Petroleum Minister's interview here. But sir, you talked about ethanol blending. I'll also bring your attention to green hydrogen. What are the specific timelines you're looking at, and how comfortably are we placed?
On ethanol blending, on biofuels, the timeline is very clear. We have to go from 15% at present, thereabouts, to 20%, which was a target for 2030. We bring it to 2020. By the end of the ethanol year in 2025. So, in other words, instead of 2030, 2025. And then it should be October of 2025. We should have 20% blending. But, madam, I would submit to you that this 20% thing is also a mental reference point. Because as you produce more biofuels, the car manufacturers then send you engines which can take 30, 40, 50% blending. And in a sense, when you did 10% blending, you were able to save 41,000 crores on the import bill on crude oil, and you paid the farmer 42,000 crores, and that increases. On green hydrogen, there I think all the figures that we've got by XYZ by 2030, these are all gross underestimation. Because today we are witnessing a situation, all that you require on green hydrogen is economically reasonably priced solar energy. And we are now enhancing capacity. We have demonstrated that we can do, from 25 cents a unit, we have brought it down to 3 cents a unit. And all you need is an electrolyzer after that. So every electrolyzer manufacturer in the world is tying up with Indian companies. Green hydrogen as a gas does not lend itself to transportation. So green hydrogen will succeed in countries like India, where there is local demand, local production and local consumption. You can have green ammonia which is exported, which Indian companies are doing. I am very optimistic on green hydrogen, because the Prime Minister is right at a point where he had anticipated this. We introduced a PLI scheme for electrolyzers for 19,700. All the private sector is in it. And I think in the coming time, It will go from being the fuel cell car or bus, will go from being a demonstrator, technology demonstrator to actually implementation. And I see that happening in a very big way in the time to come.
And so before we wrap up this conversation, your specific priorities in this term?
My priorities are to make sure that the first two, availability, affordability, stay within range. In the case of availability in particular, we can't afford to take any chances, and we'll ensure it as we have in the last 3 years. Affordability also, I keep my fingers, toes, and whatever else you can keep crossed to make sure there's no global turbulence or disruption in the supply line somewhere. Enhance the E&P, and we'll do that drastically. And on sustainability, put on the accelerator. More green hydrogen, more biofuels from diverse sources. Really get the CBG, biogas plants going. And I think it's all in all, it's a good story.
Well, absolutely, sir. And on that sanguine note, thank you so much for joining us in our Parliament studio and sharing your perspective with us, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, viewers, that's all we had for you in this edition. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Goodbye for now from my side.